I never noticed the floor tilt until my keys slid toward the closet on their own. The ceiling light flickered once, not out, just unsure of itself. Something behind the door exhaled, and I told myself it was just the house settling. Back then, I lived in this cramped studio on Maple Street. The kind of place where your bed doubles as your couch, where the refrigerator hums angry songs at 3 a.m. I'd been there 4 months, maybe 5. Long enough to stop jumping when the radiator clanged. The closet sat in the corner like a mouth that wouldn't close properly. Its door hung crooked, gaps showing darkness that felt too deep. I kept meaning to fix the hinges, kept forgetting until I'd stand there with my laundry basket, staring. That Tuesday night, I was folding shirts when I heard it. A soft click from inside the closet, like someone turning a doorknob very slowly, very carefully. I froze with the sweater half folded in my hands. The sound came again. Click, then silence that stretched too long. I set the basket down and walked over. My feet made small sounds on the hardwood. The closer I got, the more the floor seemed to slope, just slightly, like standing on a ship that was gently listing. I pressed my ear to the door. Nothing, but the wood felt warm. Warmer than it should be in October. My keys had slid again. This time they'd moved 3 inches toward the base of the door. I picked them up and felt how the metal had grown cold, cold enough to sting my palm. I tried the handle. It turned easy, too easy, like it had been oiled recently. The door swung open with a whisper. Inside was darkness, but not the kind I expected. This darkness had texture, had depth that seemed to go on longer than my apartment allowed. The hangers were still there, holding my winter coats, but behind them, past where the back wall should be, something else waited. I reached for the light switch. My fingers found it, flicked it up. The bulb buzzed, then died. But for just a second, in the yellow flash, I saw carpet, burgundy carpet with tiny golden leaves scattered across it. I stood there holding my breath, listening to sounds that didn't belong. The soft hum of an air conditioner I didn't own. The distant ping of an elevator that couldn't exist in my building. My laundry basket sat forgotten on the bed. The keys had slid toward the closet again. This time they'd moved 6 inches. I backed away from the door but didn't close it. Couldn't close it. Something about shutting it felt like admitting defeat, like agreeing to forget what I'd almost seen. That night, I slept on the couch with all the lights on. Every hour, I'd glance toward the closet. The door stayed open exactly as I'd left it. But sometimes, in my peripheral vision, I swore I saw movement, a shadow shifting, a curtain being pulled aside. When morning came, I made coffee and pretended everything was normal, brushed my teeth like any other Wednesday, got dressed for work like I hadn't spent the night afraid of my own closet. But as I reached for my jacket, my keys slid again. This time they didn't stop at the closet door. They slid under it, into whatever waited on the other side. I knelt down and pressed my face to the gap. The burgundy carpet was still there, but now I could see more. The edge of a bed with white sheets, a corner of a wooden dresser, a lamp with a shade that cast warm yellow light. The air that drifted out smelled like lilac and disinfectant, like a hotel room that had been cleaned too many times. I called in sick to work that day, spent the morning sitting cross-legged in front of the closet, staring into what couldn't be there, The carpet stretched into a room I'd never rented, never even seen. By noon, I'd worked up enough courage to reach inside. My hand passed through what should have been the back wall, touched something soft and thick, hotel carpet, real enough to leave lint on my fingers. I pulled my arm back and studied the white fibers. They smelled like industrial vacuum cleaners and strangers' shoes, like places where people sleep but never live. The room beyond looked ordinary, painfully ordinary. Beige walls with generic landscape paintings, a desk with a phone that had too many buttons, a television mounted too high on the wall, but ordinary in a way that felt rehearsed, like someone had tried very hard to make it forgettable. I found my keys on the carpet, just inside the threshold. They sat next to a plastic key card, white with a magnetic strip, the kind hotels use for their doors. I picked up both and turned the card over. Room 313 was printed in small black numbers. Below that, my name, spelled correctly, middle initial included, Sarah J. Matthews. A name I hadn't used since college. The key card felt warm, recently handled. I slipped it into my pocket and backed out of the closet. I spent the rest of the afternoon looking up hotels, every chain I could think of, searched for properties with rooms numbered in the 300s, called 6 different places asking about a room 313. We don't go that high, one desk clerk told me. Our building only has 2 floors. Another said 313. That would be on the 3rd floor. But we skipped floor 3. Bad luck, you know? By evening, I'd called 22 hotels. None of them had a room 313. None of them had any record of a Sarah J. Matthews checking in. But the key card sat on my kitchen counter, getting warmer. I ordered Chinese food and ate it cold while staring at the closet. The door had swung wider on its own, wide enough now to show half the hotel room. I could see the entire bed. White comforter pulled tight. 2 pillows arranged with mechanical precision. A small refrigerator hummed in the corner. Minibar, with a price list taped to the top. Even from my couch, I could read the prices. $4 for a Coke, $8 for a tiny bottle of wine, $15 for peanuts. At the bottom of the list, someone had written, room service available 24 hours, in blue ink. The handwriting looked familiar, looked like mine. That night I dreamed about walking through the closet, about stepping onto that burgundy carpet and hearing the door click shut behind me. In the dream, the hotel room felt like coming home, like returning to a place I'd been missing without knowing it. I woke up at 3:13 a.m. with carpet fibers in my hair, burgundy fibers with tiny golden leaves. I found them on my pillow, on my sheets, scattered across the hardwood like evidence of somewhere I'd never been. The closet door was closed. I didn't remember closing it. When I tried the handle, it was locked, but I hadn't installed a lock, had never needed one. I pressed my ear to the wood and heard music, soft instrumental jazz, the kind they play in hotel elevators, the kind that makes you forget you're moving between floors. Under the music, something else. The sound of pages turning, like someone reading in bed, taking their time with each page. I bought a small crowbar at the hardware store the next morning, told the cashier I was doing renovations. She smiled and wished me luck. If she could see the panic in my eyes, she was too polite to mention it. The closet door opened easily when I got home. No resistance at all, like it had been waiting for me to return. The hotel room sat exactly as I'd left it, bed made, curtains drawn, air conditioning humming its quiet song. I stepped inside for the first time. The carpet felt real under my feet, soft and slightly worn, like thousands of guests had walked this path before me. The air was cool, climate controlled. It tasted like recycled air and distant flowers. Everything looked exactly like a mid-range hotel room, the kind you'd find off any interstate. But something was wrong with the angles. The space felt larger than it should, like it stretched further than my apartment allowed. I walked to the window and pulled back the curtain. Outside was nothing. Not darkness, not sky, just nothing. A blank gray that hurt to look at directly, like staring at television static made solid. The desk sat against the far wall with a mirror hanging above it, a standard hotel mirror with a thin wooden frame. But when I looked into it, I saw the room, saw the bed, the dresser, the door, everything except me. I waved my hand. The reflection showed empty air. I stepped closer, touched the glass. My fingers left no prints on a surface that should have been cold. The mirror felt warm, like skin. I spent an hour testing it, jumping, dancing, making faces. The reflection stayed constant, a perfect image of room 313 with no guest inside. Like I was invisible, like I'd never been born. On the desk I found a notepad, hotel stationery with welcome guest printed at the top. Someone had written on the first page, my handwriting again, in blue ink, the same pen from the minibar list. Day 1. The mirror doesn't work. Everything else seems normal. The bathroom has tiny soaps, shaped like shells. The water tastes like it's been sitting in pipes for years. I flipped to the next page. Day 3. Left a quarter on the bedside table. It's gone. Found a note in the drawer that says, "Thank you for your stay. I haven't stayed anywhere." Page 3. Day 7. The woman down the hall hums while she cleans. Always the same song. I think it's a lullaby my grandmother used to sing. But my grandmother's been dead for 6 years. Page 4 was blank, waiting. I sat on the bed and wrote, "Day unknown." I found the notepad. I don't remember writing any of this, but it's my handwriting, my pen, my words about things I've never seen. I closed the pad and put it back on the desk. When I turned around, there was a piece of candy on the pillow, a mint wrapped in cellophane, hotel turn-down service. But no one had entered the room. I'd been watching the only door. I unwrapped the mint and put it in my mouth. It tasted like childhood, like the peppermints my aunt gave me when I was 7. Sweet and sharp and tinged with something I couldn't name. On the way out, I glanced back at the mirror. For just a second, I thought I saw movement, a shadow crossing behind my invisible reflection, like someone else was in the room, someone the mirror could see. I left a bracelet on the dresser, silver with a small charm, a gift from my sister last Christmas. I wanted to see if it would disappear like the quarter. Wanted proof that this place took things, that it collected pieces of the people who found it. The closet door closed behind me with a soft click. When I tried to open it again immediately, it was locked. But through the gap at the bottom, I could hear music. Different this time. Not elevator jazz, a piano playing something sad and familiar, something I might have known once, in another life. The next morning, my bracelet was gone. In its place sat a small wooden horse, hand-carved, paint worn smooth by small fingers. I'd owned one exactly like it when I was 12. Lost it during our move from Portland. cried for days until my mother bought me a new one. But this wasn't the replacement. This was the original. I knew because of the tiny chip on the horse's left ear, the spot where I'd accidentally dropped it on concrete, the flaw that made it mine. I held it in my palm and felt 20 years collapse. Felt 12-year-old tears on 32-year-old cheeks. The wood was warm, recently handled, like someone had been holding it close, keeping it safe. I found it next to a small leather book I hadn't noticed before, bound in brown leather with a ribbon bookmark. The kind of guest book you'd find in a bed and breakfast. Somewhere guests wrote about their pleasant stays and recommended local restaurants. I opened it carefully. The pages were cream-colored, thick paper that whispered when turned. Most of the entries were blurred, names and dates that shifted when I tried to read them, like looking at text underwater. But one name stayed clear. Mine. Written in my handwriting, over and over. Sarah J. Matthews, dated 3 years ago. Sarah J. Matthews, dated 5 years ago. Sarah J. Matthews, dated last month. Each entry ended the same way. She's still here. I flipped through page after page, found my signature dozens of times, sometimes written carefully, like I was signing important documents, sometimes scrawled quickly, like I was late for something, but always the same message underneath. She's still here. I'd never written in any guest book, never stayed in a hotel that required one, but the handwriting was undeniably mine. The way I crossed my T's, the loop I made with my capital S, the small scar on my index finger that made me grip pens slightly crooked. At the back of the book, I found a page dated today, written in ink that still looked wet, fresh words in my familiar script. Sarah J. Matthews, day unknown. She's still here. She's always been here. She just forgot for a while. I dropped the book. It landed open to a page I hadn't seen before. A page with yesterday's date and different handwriting. Neat, careful letters that belong to someone else. The guest in 313 is confused. She keeps leaving things and expecting them to disappear. She doesn't understand that this is where lost things come home. Below that, in my handwriting, I understand now. I've been looking for this place my whole life. I just never knew it had an address. I backed toward the door, clutching the wooden horse. But the door wouldn't open. The handle turned, but the door stayed closed, like something was holding it shut from the outside. I tried again, put my whole weight against it. The door didn't budge. From the hallway beyond, I heard footsteps. Slow, measured steps coming closer. A woman's shoes on hotel carpet. Click, pause, click, pause. Like someone checking room numbers as they walked. The steps stopped outside my door. I held my breath and waited. A key card slid into the electronic lock. I heard the mechanism engage, heard the soft beep that meant access granted, but the door still wouldn't open. From the other side, a woman's voice, soft and patient, familiar in a way that made my chest tight. Room service? I have your turn-down service. I pressed my face to the door. I didn't order anything. It's complimentary, she said, for long-term guests. I'm not a long-term guest. I just found this place yesterday. She laughed, a sound like silver bells wrapped in velvet. Like my own laugh, but older, wiser. Yesterday was 6 years ago, Sarah. You've been here all along. You just forgot how to see it. I woke up the next morning in my own bed, my real bed, in my real apartment. The wooden horse sat on my nightstand like it belonged there, like it had always been there. The closet door was closed. When I tried the handle, it opened onto hangers and winter coats, nothing more. The back wall was solid, real. I knocked on it and heard the dull thud of genuine drywall. I might have convinced myself it was all a dream, except for the smell. Lilac and disinfectant clung to my clothes, to my hair, to the sheets where I'd slept. I showered and went to work, spent 8 hours pretending to focus on spreadsheets while thinking about guest books and mirrors that couldn't see me, about voices in hallways that shouldn't exist. When I came home, my closet door was open, not wide, just cracked, just enough to show a sliver of burgundy carpet, a strip of that impossible room waiting in the space between my winter coats. On the threshold, someone had left a candy wrapper, folded neatly in half, the same mint I'd eaten the day before. But I'd thrown the wrapper away, watched it disappear into the hotel room's small wastebasket. I picked it up and unfolded it. Inside, written in pencil, someone had written, "Welcome back." That night, my television turned on by itself. I was washing dishes when I heard it. Soft instrumental music drifting from the living room. Not a channel I recognized. The kind of music they play in hotel lobbies, in elevators, in places where people wait. I dried my hands and walked over. The screen showed nothing but a blue background with white text. "Welcome to Hotel Maple. We hope you enjoy your stay." Below that, in smaller letters, "Room 313. Housekeeping will arrive at 11 p.m. I grabbed the remote and started pressing buttons. Nothing changed. The channel wouldn't turn. The volume wouldn't adjust. Even unplugging the TV didn't help. The screen stayed lit, powered by something I couldn't locate. At 10:47, I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my apartment. Someone walking slowly, wheels squeaking behind them, like a housekeeping cart being pushed down hotel corridor. The steps stopped outside my door. I looked through the peephole and saw nothing. Just the empty hallway of my normal apartment building. But the squeaking continued, back and forth, like someone organizing supplies. At exactly 11 p.m., the television turned off. The footsteps resumed, faded down the hall toward the elevator. But we didn't have an elevator. My building was only 3 stories. We had stairs. I called maintenance the next morning, told them about the TV problem, about the strange electrical behavior. They sent a man named Carlos who spoke softly and carried too many tools. He checked everything, pulled the TV away from the wall, examined wires and outlets and fuse boxes, tested connections with devices that beeped importantly. "It's clean," he said finally. "No shorts, no bad connections. Everything's up to code." He paused, screwdriver still in his hand. "But who the hell wires in Muzak? There's a signal coming from somewhere, weak but steady, like someone's broadcasting elevator music right into your wall." He couldn't find the source. Spent 2 hours tracing wires and checking panels. Left scratching his head and promising to come back with different equipment. That night, the music started again, but softer this time, barely audible, like it was playing from very far away. From somewhere it had to travel a long distance to reach. I pressed my ear to the closet door and heard it clearly. Jazz piano and strings. The sound of a lounge where no one danced anymore, where the bartender had gone home hours ago, but the music played on for empty chairs. The next time I opened the closet, I went further in, past the bed, past the dresser, to the hotel room door that I'd been avoiding. It was heavy wood, painted white, a peephole in the center, a security chain hanging loose. I put my eye to the peephole and looked out. A hallway stretched in both directions. Standard hotel hallway with burgundy carpet and brass fixtures. Doors lined both walls, each with its own number. 311, 312, 314, 315. Room 313 was missing, like this room existed in the gap between other rooms. I unlatched the chain and opened the door carefully. The hallway was real. I could step into it, could feel the carpet under my feet, and smell the industrial cleaning products they used on the walls. To my left, the hall ended at an elevator bank. Brass doors with up and down arrows. A small table with silk flowers sat beside them. Plastic roses that had never been alive. To my right, the hallway stretched longer, much longer, like it had been built with too many rooms and hadn't stopped when it should have. The ceiling lights grew dimmer as they went, until the far end disappeared into shadows. That's where I saw her. She stood at the very edge of the light, just far enough away that I couldn't make out her face, just close enough that I could see the hem of her dress, floral pattern with tiny blue flowers. The fabric looked damp, like she'd been caught in rain. She never moved when I looked directly at her, but if I glanced away even for a second, she'd be closer. Never much closer, just enough to notice. Like she was walking when I wasn't watching, like she only existed in my peripheral vision. I tried calling to her. Hello? Are you lost? She didn't answer, but I heard her breathe. Deep, careful breaths, like someone trying not to make noise, like someone hiding. I started walking toward her. The carpet muffled my footsteps, but I could hear my own heartbeat, could feel it in my throat and wrists. The hallway seemed to stretch as I walked. Each step forward made the end recede further away. After 20 steps, I stopped, looked back toward room 313. The door was still open, but it looked small now, far away, like looking through the wrong end of a telescope. The woman was closer, close enough now that I could see her hands. Pale fingers twisted together, wedding ring on her left hand, a ring that caught the dim hallway light and threw it back in strange directions. "What's your name?" I whispered. She turned her head slightly, not enough to see her face, just enough to show the line of her neck, the edge of her jaw, familiar angles that made my breath catch. When she spoke, her voice layered with mine, like singing in harmony with myself. "You know my name." I backed toward room 313, slow steps, careful steps, keeping her in sight. But the hallway had grown longer. The door was a distant square of light that seemed to drift further away with each backward step. The woman followed, not walking, gliding. Her dress didn't move with the motion, hung perfectly still, like she was floating just above the carpet, like gravity worked differently here. "I don't know you," I said. "You know me better than anyone," she whispered. Her voice came from all directions now, from the walls, from the ceiling, from inside my own head. "You've been looking for me your whole life." I reached the door and stumbled inside, slammed it shut and turned the deadbolt, but I could still hear her breathing, could still hear her whisper my name through wood that shouldn't let sound pass. I pressed my back to the door and slid down to the floor. Outside, footsteps paced back and forth, patient steps, like someone waiting for an appointment they knew would eventually come. I must have fallen asleep against the door, must have slipped into dreams while listening to her walk the hallway, because when I opened my eyes, I was in the bed, fully dressed, purse still on my shoulder, shoes still on my feet. The bedside clock read 3:13 a.m. in soft red numbers, but 3:13 in which time zone? Which day? The digits seemed to pulse with their own heartbeat, too bright for a hotel room designed for sleep. I sat up slowly. The bed was comfortable, too comfortable, like it had been made specifically for my body. The pillows held the exact shape of my head. The blanket was pulled up to precisely where I liked it. Details no hotel housekeeper could know. My phone lay on the nightstand, dead battery, black screen. When I plugged it into the charger that was already there, it came to life showing missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize, text messages in languages I couldn't read. The newest message was from my own number, sent to myself 2 hours ago. The water remembers. Drink slowly. I hadn't sent any message. My phone had been dead. But there it was, in my text history, a conversation with myself that I couldn't remember having. On the dresser, someone had left a glass of water, crystal clear in a hotel tumbler. A napkin beside it with words written in blue ink. Drink slowly, it remembers. The same message from my phone. The same handwriting from the guest book. My handwriting, though I had no memory of writing it. I picked up the glass. The water was cold, too cold, like it had been sitting in a refrigerator for hours. But when I sipped it, it tasted warm, like summer rain, like swimming pools in childhood, like tears. Each sip brought back something I'd forgotten. The taste of my grandmother's lemonade. The way water tasted after running too far. The metallic flavor of drinking from garden hoses on hot days. Memories layered in liquid. Stories dissolved in something that should have been simple. I drank it all. Couldn't stop myself. Each swallow was another memory. Another moment that had been lost and found again. By the time the glass was empty, I remembered everything. I remembered the first time I found this room. 7 years old, hiding in my childhood closet during a thunderstorm. I remembered stepping through and finding a place that felt like safety, like home, like somewhere I'd always belonged. I remembered growing up and forgetting. Remembered losing the ability to see what had always been there. Remembered the years of searching for something I couldn't name. A feeling of missing something that didn't exist. I remembered coming back as an adult, desperate and lost and so tired of looking for a place that felt real. I remembered the relief of finding it again, the joy of discovering that some magic doesn't die. It just waits. But I also remembered the fear, the way this place changed you, the way it wanted you to stay, the way it made you forget there was anywhere else to go. I set the empty glass on the nightstand. Already the memories were fading, slipping away like water through cupped hands, like dreams that made perfect sense until you tried to tell someone about them. Outside the window, dawn was breaking over nothing. Gray light filtering through that blank sky. But inside the room, it was still 3:13 a.m. The clock hadn't moved. Time worked differently here, moved only when it felt like moving. I tried the door, still locked. But now I could hear music from the hallway, not elevator jazz, something softer. A lullaby played on piano, notes that drifted under the door like smoke, like the ghost of a song my grandmother used to hum. The woman was singing along, her voice barely audible. words I couldn't make out, but rhythms I recognized, melodies that had lived in my bones since childhood, songs that felt like coming home. When I woke up, I was back in my own bed. Morning light filtered through my apartment windows. Real light from a real sun in a real sky. The wooden horse sat on my nightstand next to my dead phone and an empty water glass. I walked to the closet, pulled the door open, found hangers and winter coats in the normal back walls of a normal closet. I knocked on the drywall, solid. I pressed my whole body against it. It didn't give. I might have thought it was over, except for the taste. Water that remembered things. Flavors that belonged to someone else's childhood. The aftertaste of dreams I'd never had. I called in sick again. Spent the morning examining every inch of the closet, looking for hidden panels, loose boards, anything that might explain how a hotel room had fit inside a space barely big enough for my clothes. By noon, I was tearing at the drywall with my fingernails, scraping paint and plaster, looking for any sign that the wall wasn't real, that somewhere behind it, room 313 was waiting. I found nothing, just insulation and wooden studs and the normal infrastructure of a normal wall. Just reality being aggressively real. That's when my landlord knocked. Mr. Hendricks with his ring of keys and his expression of mild concern. He'd gotten calls from neighbors about noise, about someone hitting walls at 7 in the morning. "Is everything all right, Sarah? Mrs. Kim downstairs said it sounded like you were demolishing something." I showed him the closet, the scratched wall, the pile of drywall flakes on the floor. I was looking for a leak. I lied. I thought I heard water running inside the wall. He frowned and ran his hand over the damaged drywall, knocked on it with his knuckles. "You never had a closet here," he said slowly. "This is where the breaker panel used to be, before the renovations." "What renovations?" "Before you moved in. We converted this place from a hotel room. It was part of the Maple Inn until it went bankrupt. We bought the building and turned it into apartments." My chest went cold. "Hotel room?" "Room 313, I think. Had to gut everything. Remove the hotel fixtures. Build proper walls for apartment living." He paused, studying my face. "You didn't know?" "I thought the rental agent would have mentioned it. Some people don't like living in converted spaces." I stared at the wall where my closet should be, where my closet had always been. "When did you finish the renovations?" 6 years ago, right before we put it on the market." He knocked on the wall again. "This used to be the entrance to the hallway. We sealed it up when we split the building into units. After he left, I sat on my bed and tried to process it. My apartment had been room 313. I'd been living inside the hotel room all along, sleeping in a bed that used to belong to strangers, cooking in a kitchen that used to be a bathroom. But my clothes were gone. The clothes that had been hanging in the closet, winter coats and dresses and shoes, everything I'd owned, gone like they'd never existed. I called the rental company, the woman who'd shown me the apartment 6 months ago. "Can you send me the original floor plan? I'm trying to figure out where to put some furniture." She emailed it within the hour. A simple layout showing a studio apartment with a kitchen alcove and a bathroom. No closet, no mention of a closet anywhere in the lease. But I remembered hanging my clothes somewhere. Remembered having a place to put my winter coats. I had pictures on my phone of the apartment before I moved in. pictures that should show an empty closet. The photos showed an empty wall. Smooth drywall painted the same beige as the rest of the apartment. No closet door, no hanging rod, no space where my clothes could have lived. I was losing my mind, or reality was reorganizing itself around me. Either way, I needed to find my clothes. They were somewhere, in some version of this room that still remembered being a hotel. 2 nights later, I found the door again. Not in the closet. The closet was still just a wall. But in the hallway outside my apartment, right where the kitchen should have been, where it had always been until that moment. It was white wood with brass numbers, 313. A peephole in the center. A key card slot where a normal lock should be. Like someone had cut a hotel door out of one reality and pasted it into another. I touched the numbers. They were warm, recently polished, real metal that left fingerprints when I pressed too hard. The key card was in my pocket. I'd been carrying it for days without realizing it. White plastic with my name printed in small black letters. Sarah J. Matthews. Room 313. No expiration date. I slid it into the slot. Heard the mechanism click. Heard the soft beep of access granted. Before I could change my mind, I knocked. 3 soft raps. The sound hotel guests make when they're not sure they have the right room. Footsteps approach from the other side. Slow, careful steps. The sound of someone checking the peephole. Someone deciding whether to answer. The chain unlatched. The deadbolt turned. The door opened just enough to show a sliver of the woman's face. Half of her mouth, one eye. Familiar features that made my reflection look like a stranger. "You came back," she said. "I never left," I replied, which was true, which was a problem. She opened the door wider. Not an invitation exactly, more like an acknowledgement that I was going to come in whether she invited me or not. That we'd been having this conversation for longer than either of us could remember. The room looked different. Still, room 313, but changed. Lived in. Personal items on the dresser, books on the nightstand, clothes hanging in the open closet where I could see them clearly. My clothes, the winter coats that had disappeared, the dresses I'd forgotten I owned. Everything hung exactly where I would have put it. "How long have you been here?" I asked. 6 years, she said, "since the renovations, since they sealed up the hallway and pretended this room didn't exist." She sat on the bed that used to be mine. That still was mine. "I've been waiting for you to remember." She looked exactly like me. Same hair, same eyes, same scar on my chin from falling off my bike when I was 9. But older somehow. Like she'd been living a life I hadn't gotten to experience yet. "What are you?" "I'm what you left behind when you forgot how to see this place." She picked up a book from the nightstand. Something I'd been reading 6 months ago. "I'm the part of you that never wanted to leave." She stood and walked to the window, pulled back the curtain to show that nothing outside. That gray blank space that wasn't quite darkness. They sealed up the room, but they couldn't seal up the memory. They couldn't make it not exist, so it found a way to keep existing. In the spaces between walls, in the time between seconds. "I want my life back," I said. "This is your life," she replied. "It's the only life you've ever wanted. You just convinced yourself you wanted something else. Something normal. Something that made sense to other people." She was right. Standing in that impossible room, I felt more real than I had in years. More present, more like myself. The apartment outside felt like a costume I'd been wearing, a role I'd been playing for an audience that wasn't paying attention. What happens if I stay? You become who you've always been. You stop pretending to be someone else. She turned from the window. But you have to choose. You can't keep living in both places. The room won't let you. I looked around at the familiar furniture, at my books and my clothes and my life arranged exactly as I would have arranged it. At the woman who was me, but better. Who was me without fear. How do I choose? She smiled, the same smile I saw in mirrors when I was actually happy. You already have. You just haven't admitted it yet. She was right. I had already chosen. Had been choosing for weeks without realizing it. Every time I opened the closet door, every time I stepped into the room that shouldn't exist, every time I came back instead of running. The minibar receipt was still printing when I woke up the next morning. A long ribbon of white paper spilling from a machine I'd never touched. It curled across the floor like a paper river, like evidence of debts I'd never knowingly accumulated. I picked up the end and started reading. Charges for bottled water, for tiny bottles of wine, for candy bars and peanuts, and services I'd never requested. Each item was time-stamped and dated, a record of every moment I'd spent in room 313. But the dates went back further than my first visit, years further. The receipt showed charges from when I was 12, when I was 7, when I was too young to remember visiting any hotel room, childhood stays I'd forgotten, nights when I'd been afraid and alone and had somehow found my way here, a place that existed in the gap between sleeping and waking, between being lost and being found. The charges weren't for material things, not really. They were for moments, for feelings, for the cost of having a place that was entirely yours, a place that existed only because you needed it to exist. Comfort during thunderstorm, $47.23. Safety from nightmares, $31.78. Quiet space for crying, $12.50. Memory of being understood, $89.41. At the bottom of the receipt, still printing, the running total climbed higher. Numbers that represented a lifetime of emotional refuge. A bill for services that couldn't be bought with normal money. And beneath the total, a note in familiar handwriting, payment rendered in full through occupancy. I understood. The room didn't want money. It wanted presence. It wanted someone to live in it, to make it real by believing it was real, to pay for its existence by existing inside it. I looked around at the space that had become more home than any home I'd ever known, at the woman who was me, sitting at the desk and writing in the guest book, recording the check-in that would never become a checkout. "We can both live here," she said without looking up. "There's room enough for both versions of ourselves. The one who's afraid of disappearing, and the one who's tired of pretending to be normal." She was right. I could feel it. The space was big enough for contradiction, for being two things at once, for living in a place that existed in the margins between possible and impossible. The receipt kept printing, would always keep printing, a record of all the moments when someone needed a place that understood them completely. All the times when the normal world wasn't enough, when reality needed to bend a little to accommodate the human heart. I signed the guest book one more time, added my name to the long list of Sarah J. Matthews, who had found this room when they needed it most, who had chosen to stay in a place that chose them back. The entry ended the same way it always did. She's still here. But this time, I knew what it meant. It wasn't a haunting. It wasn't a trap. It was a promise. A commitment to keep existing in the space between what is and what could be. To remain in a room that only existed because someone needed it to exist. Outside, the real world continued its relentless march towards sense and order. Inside room 313, time moved differently, moved only fast enough to allow for healing, for becoming, for finally coming home. The minibar hummed quietly in the corner. The receipt printed its endless documentation. And somewhere in the walls, between the seconds that fell through the cracks of regular time, I lived. We lived. All the versions of myself that had ever needed a place to hide and be found. The woman at the desk finished writing and looked up. "Welcome home," she said. "You've been here all along."